What you're seeing here is Eskrima training. And this is not necessarily the most practical way to train if you want to use a cane as a weapon of self-defense. Don't get me wrong, I love this training. I put a lot of time into Eskrima training. It is an art I am very passionate about. But when it comes to just learning how to smash somebody with a cane, if you have to in a self-defense situation, if you're going to do a traditional Filipino art, you're best off training De Campo 123 original. That art has the ideals that I'll be talking about in this video. The ideals of using the cane as a practical fighting implement. So, the elements of train caning have to have carenza, which is what you see me doing here, shadow boxing with a stick, with a weapon. And in this video, you'll see me using two weapons. A light cane, a light crooktop cane, and this amazing walking stick made for me by Jeremy Duncan. Target training is a must. You have to smash things. You have to do bag work. You have to work like a pugilist. I didn't like hitting the target with my Duncan walking stick. It's too pretty. Now here you see me actually drawing the knife and using it. This is changing my level of force, and it is also applying a different weapon as I close distance into the clinching range, which you have to practice if you're going to be a practical cane fighter. I love crooktop canes because I can carry them anywhere. No one is going to question an old man with a crooktop cane. But the reality is, I would rather have a ball top cane or just a straight stick if I was going to fight someone, because that crooktop can get tangled up. And the idea of hooking someone in motion and pulling them is very difficult. I don't put much time into training them. I train my cane fighting like a pugilist. I train it as a striking tool primarily, and a clinching tool if I have to. But I never want to clinch. I never want to be that close if I have a cane. Now, don't get me wrong. Once you have a good base in this type of skill, that stuff is fun to train. Hooking legs, hooking the back of the neck, but it really isn't as practical as many people think, in my opinion. In my opinion, you're better off using your blunt impact weapon as a blunt impact weapon and getting very good at that, rather than putting a lot of time into things that are iffy at best. The fun of training is a different story. Sometimes you do stuff in training that isn't directly applicable to combat, except in very limited situations. You know, when they talk about high percentage techniques versus low percentage techniques, the low percentage techniques are often the funnest to train because they're cool. So cool things keep us training. Cool things keep us working. So I'm not saying don't do it, but get the base down in hitting and moving. Now Keith and I are working some pads. Watch this carefully.
Much talked about head disarm.
When you are hitting stuff, there is a chance that you will lose your weapon. There is always a chance in fighting that you will lose your weapon. So we will talk about that in a future video. But here we're doing pad training like a pugilist. Keith has given me combinations to try, and I don't get to decide what I'm going to do. He tells me what I'm going to do. So this makes it a little awkward for me at times, but that's exactly what you need. You need a coach holding pads, moving around with you, and setting up different strike combinations so you can become very proficient at using your weapon. And we're using empty hand strikes as well, because you need to be able to apply your alive hand, your kicks, hammer fists, whatever you want to do. So this is a great way to train. It's an important way to train, and is one of the primary, most important ingredients to practical fighting. Pad training is very, very important, and I don't think a lot of stick fighters use it as much as they should. Now keep in mind, you always want to keep your pad holder safe. Your pad holder is one of the most important people in your training. So when you're hitting pads, whether you're doing Muay Thai, boxing, or what we're doing here, treasure your pad, man, because he is giving you the gift of his body. He's putting himself at risk to help your training. Now, another primary thing is sparring. Here we are sparring with equal weapons, which isn't realistic, but in sparring you get to apply your techniques, you get to learn your range, you get to learn your movement. You get to fight with real pressure. Your training partner's not cooperating with you. He or she is giving it back to you, and you get to try to do your techniques in real time with someone working against you. If you have the right training equipment, you can include things like headbutts, elbows, you name it. You can do a lot of things if you have the right training equipment to keep you safe. When you're sparring, your most important goal is to keep your partner safe. It's not winning, because you cannot win at sparring. You can only practice. When you clinch, you might want to give it like 3 to 5 seconds before you break up, so that you can practice some knees, some headbutts, different techniques. You also want to do some experimental sparring, like having multiple people try to rush you while you have a stick and they don't. Also, try to work the stick against a shorter weapon such as a knife. This is good for both the stick user and the knife user. These are really important drills, and probably are more important than equal weapon sparring. And while I love drills like the grouping systems and flow drills and Sombrada drills, this to me is way more important and way more practical to train if you are planning on using a stick, a cane, or any blunt impact weapon as a tool of self-defense.